This program is sponsored by the Florida Counseling Centers, FCC, where we help you live the life you've always wanted.
We live in a broken world. Loss and grief is all around us. Today, we're going to tell you how you can engage a healthy grief process. So get ready. We're about to change your reality.
Tammy Trent has been a popular Christian recording artist for many years, with several #1 and top 10 hits on the recording charts. Most recently, she's been singing and speaking to women and young girls from all walks of life through the Women of Faith conferences. Tammy and her husband worked together for years to build her musical career, as music was the focus of their lives and their ministry. But several years ago, Tammy sank to the unimaginable depths of loss and grief. While on vacation in Jamaica in September of 2001, Trent Linderink, Tammy's high school sweetheart and husband of 11 years, went freediving in the crystal blue waters of the Blue Lagoon, and he never returned. Her world had been turned upside down and would never be the same. We're going to talk with Tammy about how she survived that terrible tragedy and how she learned to breathe again. From her book, Learning to Breathe Again, Tammy writes,
After lunch, we returned to the rental car so Trent could put on his diving suit. He reached for my hand. That was our thing. We held hands everywhere we went. We walked together to the dock, and once again, I was reminded that I had married the world's handsomest man. Trent had been certified to scuba dive since he was 12. In the last year or so, he had taught himself to free dive too, exploring deep water without an oxygen tank. We settled onto the edge of the dock's platform, swinging our feet in the cobalt blue water of Jamaica's Blue Lagoon that seemed to blend into a sparkling mass of glistening diamonds on the sea. He slid quietly into the lagoon and gently treaded water for a moment. Then he smiled at me and said, "Okay, I'll be back in a little bit, then we can do something you want to do. I'll see you in 15 minutes. So he pushed off with his little scooter, pulling him toward the center of the lagoon. I waited for him to stop, turn back, and wave. That was another little thing we did. Say goodbye, walk away, then turn to wave a little wave, and then turn again and again. It was a standing joke with us, our silly repetitive waving. And there it was. He turned back to me and waved that funny little wave I'd seen millions of times. Then Trent turned toward the deep water, sank beneath the surface, and was gone.
Tammy, this story about you and Trent is an incredible love story, first and foremost. Tell me about the beginning. How did it all start between you and Trent?
Gosh, you know, I can close my eyes and completely remember the first time that I saw this guy walk into church, and I was completely taken by, he's yummy. He is gorgeous. He's amazing. He walked in with 2 other guys, and I thought, I've got to meet these guys. Who are they? Where did they come from? And you know, one thing for me as a 15-year-old girl at that time was seeing these guys walk in and then begin to lift up their hands and begin to worship God. There was something about that moment that was very attractive to me as a young girl. And I found out we lived on the same side of town together, so we got to go to the same fellowship group together. I got to really get to know these guys and honestly see if they were really interested in the things of God. That was pretty important to me as a young girl. And I found out early on that they were. I had my eye on the youngest brother of the 3. He had his eye on me. I couldn't believe it. I was one of those tomboy jocks growing up, and I thought this guy could have anybody he wants in the youth group. These beautiful girls with beautiful hairstyles and wearing the perfect outfit and clothes, and I felt like I was so the opposite. But there was something in me that he saw and he was drawn to, and I don't know what it was, but I wasn't going to argue with him. So I was about a month shy of my 16th birthday, turned 16. I was now allowed to date. and he was my choice. I chose him, and we began to date, and it was really a great adventure for me. He was a fun guy, full of life. He had come to faith later in life. So I think for me as a girl that had known Jesus my whole life and been raised in a Christian home, I was so interested in his God. His God was so real, so fun, so cool and hip, and I thought, tell me more. And so I think I learned a lot more about who Jesus really was in that relationship with him. You know, we dated for 7.5 years, and I got to marry this amazing prince, and everything that I experienced in my dating relationship just now overflowed into my marriage with him. And he was really the kind of guy that spoke life into my spirit every day. And I wasn't always, you know, the same. I didn't always return that same favor, that gift. You know, I was the girl that had blow-ups and said things without thinking and had regrets and would go, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And I felt like I was the forgive me girl all the time, please forgive me. And he was always that consistent, faithful guy. He never threw stuff back in my face when he had every right, when I probably threw it first. And you know, I don't know, I was a woman that knew love, and I'm sure the way God intended it. And yet it was everything I took for granted, because I never thought I would live a day without him. And it was in September of 2001 I was asked to go over on a mission trip to Jamaica. We went together, and we had one day off in between this mission trip before we were to begin. Well, we had a vacation first, I should say that. We had a beautiful vacation first, and then we were going to begin this mission trip. But I had a day off in between, and we went to this beautiful place called the Blue Lagoon. And Trent went free diving that afternoon, and said he'd be gone for 15 minutes. And when he got back, we'd go do something that I wanted to do. So there I sat waiting 15 minutes. He's going to be back, and now it's my time.
Right.
And 15 minutes came and went, and 20 minutes, and 30, and 40. And at that point, I started to get concerned. And I got up and got close to the edge of the water and started to look for him, and didn't see him anywhere. And I think at that moment, fear gripped every part of me. I felt helpless and hopeless, and the tears at that moment began to flow as I knew there was something desperately wrong. I got into a boat with 2 strangers. We circled the lagoon looking for him and found nothing. And I went back to the dock and just cried my eyes out, because I knew at that moment that my life would never be the same again. And I think that began a journey of choosing life or choosing death for myself, knowing that I would wake up the next morning and the whole world would shift. That would be the morning of September 11, 2001. When America was falling apart, I stood there watching a television as the second plane plowed into the Twin Towers in New York City. Moments later, getting a phone call that they had recovered Trent, and he didn't survive his little free dive expedition that afternoon. He didn't survive. And so that began a lot of questions and a journey for me, and just simply putting my life back together again when nothing makes sense. Here, I've trusted God my whole life, and God giving me the greatest gift of my life, this covering in my life, the love of my life, my best friend, my soulmate, my ministry partner who traveled with me everywhere. In fact, when I signed a record deal in '95, I took his first name as my last name. You know, together we were Tammy and Trent Linderink, but on the platform I became Tammy Trent. So we were really in this thing together. And so I'm standing on the edge of the water going, God, what do I do now?
Yeah.
What do I do with my life, and where do I go from here? And are you there? Are you real? Is this real? And it began a journey for me that I feel like I'm still traveling, and a chapter that I'm still writing today.
An awesome, awesome story. Can you tell us a little bit more about the process that you went through? I know that there was an anchor point for you in Jamaica, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Where you met this woman who was cleaning the rooms.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
It was a huge turning point in my life. You know, I've never been one of those girls that, like, I'm going to put God to the test.
Right.
He better show up at 3 o'clock wearing red and black and, you know, this huge sombrero. You know, I've never tested him that way.
Probably a good thing.
I know. He might look ridiculous in a sombrero. But, so I've never really put him to the test that way, but I was totally in that place where I just, God, are you real? Do you see me? Do you see this girl? And I missed my mom, I missed my sister. Nobody could get to me. I was in this place by myself. All flights were grounded.